Hi, this is Kathy from Night Owl Quilting Studio, and today's demonstration is to show you how to attach borders to your quilt. Quite often when you're working with a pattern, the pattern will tell you the width to cut your strips for your border, and then it just says attach borders and quilt as desired. It doesn't really give you clear instructions on a good way to attach your borders. And so a lot of times people don't really understand what makes a good border and how to attach it so that it will lay nice and flat. And so today in my demonstration, I'm going to show you how to achieve a nice flat border without curves and waves in it. So the first thing that you want to do with your quilt is you don't want to measure the very end, the very top, or the very bottom, because when you have a lot of seam allowances in a quilt, which most of us do when we add all of our blocks together, that creates multiple seams. And sometimes when you're at the end of a seam in a block, you tend to veer off a little bit on your 1/4 inch. So the ends, which are going to be at the top and the bottom of your quilt, can be a little bit off. The most accurate spot in your quilt is in the center. So if you take your measurement in the center of your quilt from one edge of the quilt block to the other edge of the quilt block, and in this case, the width of my quilt is measuring 40.5 inches. So you want to make sure that you go exactly with that measurement. You don't want to go down to 40. You don't want to go up to 41. You want to go with the exact 40.5. If it measured 40.25 or 40.75, that's what you would go with for your measurement. I tend to like to add the top border and the bottom border to my quilt first. So I would cut, knowing that a piece of fabric is generally 40 to 45 inches wide. That means that in a width of 40.5, I could cut one strip, the width of my fabric, and the width that they recommend in the pattern. In this case, I'm doing 2.5 inch border. I would cut one strip, 2.5 inches, 40 to 45 inches wide. And I have to make sure that the width of my fabric is more than 40. It needs to be at least 40.5 minus the salvage edges in order to fit properly on the top and the bottom of this quilt. So you would find your measurement, then you would cut your strip, and then you would find the center of your border strip and the center of your quilt top and your quilt bottom, and then you would match your centers. So I have already done that on this quilt. I've already added the borders to the top and the bottom in that fashion, and you can see that it lays nice and flat and straight. So I'm not going to demonstrate how I did that. Instead, I'm going to show you how to do your length, because the length is a little trickier, because the length of your quilt is not likely to be 40 or 45 inches like a width of fabric. So that will require you to add more strips onto your quilt. So if you're adding the top and the bottom borders, you want to do those first in the exact same manner that I'm going to do these side borders. And you have to take your measurement of the length of your quilt with those borders on. They need to be included in your length. So again, you're going to go to the exact center of your quilt, and you're going to take your measurement right down the middle. And on mine, it actually ends up being 60 inches exactly. So I know that a width of fabric is not going to be 60 inches. So I'm going to have to cut at least 2 strips for that width. So I have my 2 strips cut 2.5 inches wide. And now what I want to do is I'm going to join these 2 strips together. Many times people will just take the strip line it up like this, and they will sew straight across and join it that way. I'm going to show you a method that will be a little bit better to do, because what it'll do is it'll make a diagonal seam on your border, so it makes it a little less visible when you're looking at it from the front of your quilt. The way that you do that is you're going to line up your strip on one of the lines on your mat. It doesn't matter which line you choose. And you're going to put the first strip horizontally on the mat with the right side facing up towards you. You're going to take the second strip and you're going to place it vertically on the mat with the right side facing down towards the mat. If you have salvage edge on your strip, you want to take the salvage edge and put it slightly to the right side of one of the lines on the mat, so that when you lay this piece down, you're going to put the salvage edge slightly above the other strip, and you're going to lay the right side of that strip on that same line that you use to place your salvage over on the bottom strip. Then you're going to take a ruler and you're going to place the edge of the ruler right in the corner where the two strips join at the top, and right at the corner where the two strips join at the bottom. I'm using a red friction pen to make my marking on this. And so you're going to make a mark with the ruler, just like this, so that you can see that mark very nicely. And so that it doesn't move and shift on you as you take it to the sewing machine, I place a pin above and below at the same angle as the drawn line is. So it will look something like this when you take it to your sewing machine. You have the drawn line in the middle, and you have your two pins at the top and the bottom. Once you've gone to your sewing machine, you're going to sew right on that line that you drew. Then you can take it back to your cutting board. Place your ruler down so that the 1/4 inch line is right on the drawn line that you have there. So your 1/4 inch line is going to be right on the line that you drew, with the extra 1/4 going towards the corner, because you're going to cut off this extra piece up at the corner. So you go ahead and cut that off like that. Your piece will now look like this. And then you're going to go to your ironing board, and because you made that mark on your fabric with your friction pen, once you place the iron on there, that marking is going to disappear. And you're going to open your binding up, and you're going to open up this seam, and you're going to press it open so it lays nice and flat. And when you do that, then you have a very nice diagonal seam that will not show up as easily on your border. So you won't see a big bulky section on the border. After you've done that and you have your seam joined together, you're going to go back to your quilt. You're going to fold your quilt in half lengthwise, like this. And you're going to place a pin here in the fold, which marks the center. So your edges of your top and bottom border will be here, and the fold will be here, which will indicate your center. And so you're going to put a pin in that center. And by the way, what you're seeing me working on today is our community quilt. You're getting a little sneak preview on the quilt, because I'm working on putting some borders on the center blocks of the quilt. So you'll be able to witness whether I did a good job on my borders or not when you come in to view the community quilt. The next thing you're going to do is take the strip that you combined. You're going to fold it right sides together, and you're going to find the center fold. You're going to place a pin there so that you're marking the center of your border strip. When you open that up, you will take and place the right sides together, match up the pins. You will take one of the pins out and use it to anchor those two pieces together. Then you would come down to the one of the corners. It doesn't matter which direction you go first. You would come to the corner and you would place a pin here on the corner. So now you have a pin in the center and you have a pin in the corner on the border strip. And you'll notice that there's, let's see if I can angle this so you can see, there's a little bit of gapping going on here because the quilt itself, with all the seams that are sewn into it, are making it a little bit bigger, slightly bigger than the border piece. And that happens most of the time with your quilts. So at this point, you're going to go halfway between the center pin and the corner pin, and you're going to place another pin matching the binding, the border piece and the quilt together. And then again, halfway between the center pin and that pin, and put another pin in. And that will help you to even out some of this uneven gapping part in there. You may still have a little bit of gapping that you'll see. If you need to put in a couple additional pins, certainly go ahead and do that. But when you bring it to your sewing machine, you're going to want to place the quilt side down so that the feed dogs will help to ease that little bit of extra in between your pins. And so that will help you to achieve a nice flat border on your quilts. You'll be very satisfied with them. The border is a frame on a quilt, so you want it to really frame and make your quilt look beautiful when you have it finished. Thank you for watching our demonstration today. I hope this helps you to put some nice, even, lovely borders on the edges of your beautiful quilts. And thank you for coming.